Hi, I'm Aoibhéann. I don't think we have too many in the room. Hopefully we'll have some people joining us. I am an actor and a writer, and I'm going to quickly, because we only have 45 minutes, just move through introductions. So I will be chairing the panel today, and then we have...
Hi, my name is Elham. I am an actor as well, and a writer and director.
Hi, my name's Lucy, and I founded and run an organisation called Climate Spring.
My name's Gavin and I am the Facilities and Sustainability Manager for Northern Ireland Screen, which is the film commission for Northern Ireland.
And today Gavin will be the boss of the slides.
I control.
Yes. Without further ado, we should probably show a clip from, well, we shouldn't, but we will show a clip from your beautiful film, and then we can have a chat afterwards.
Yeah,
it should speak for itself.
Yeah. Should I have introduced it?
Where's the man? In bed? Well, I'd like to see him. You haven't seen him in so long. I'm sure you can wait a little longer. You changed your number. It's good to see you. To be here again. There's something there's always something with you. I've been seeing him lately. Baba. Baba's body is so close to the river. I keep thinking we're being trapped under floodwater. Something needs to be done. And I think it needs to be done right now.
Mira, our father died. And you became the ghost.
Fatima, I'm sorry.
No, I needed my sister.
What a coward. I was scared.
You were selfish. Auntie? Go back to bed a minute.
Look at you.
Can Auntie read me a story?
No, Auntie was just about to leave. So sorry. Just a quick one. Then sleep. Promise? The desert was so hot. The sun so bright. That thirst so great. What was Hajar to do?
What did Hajar do, Baba?
वो दौड़कर पहाड़ों के दरमियां पानी की तलाश में भागी। वो भागी और वो भागी। कितनी बार?
3 times, 4 times, 6 times.
7 times. जब तक कि वो और भाग ना सकी, लेकिन खुदा ने इस्माइल की चीख सुन ली।
Contain yourself. Contain yourself.
इतना परवरिश बख्श, इतना मीठा
She made a barrier of sand and stone to preserve it.
कि हजर ने पुकारा
पानी पानी
Pani. Pani.
Beautiful. And that's from There Will Come Soft Rain.
Yeah, I feel like I should have introduced the film.
Well, I
as
should have introduced
No,
the
no,
film.
it's okay. No. So just to give background on the film, it's called There Will Come Soft Rains, which was founded by Climate Spring, and it's a film about a girl who's so haunted by rising sea levels that she decides to dig up her father's grave, and she just dug him up and been arrested and told that she needs the signature of her next of kin, which is her sister, which is where that scene comes in when she goes to meet her.
I guess the question I have for you is, did you write a climate story, or did you write a story that happened to be a climate story? You know, because often the two can happen just organically in a writer, and then you found a home or a person or a group to support you, or where did the impetus come from?
Well, we found the home first, and then we found the story. So Climate Spring are an incredible organization who had this competition where they were inviting pitches for a short film that's about climate, but it's not about climate. And the challenge with this film was, how do we tell a story that is more drama and character focused rather than, you know, the climate focused, but climate being an underlying theme. And we landed on this idea that we pitched to Lucy and her team at Climate Spring, and they loved it, and we worked together and we made it happen.
And has climate been something how did you find Climate Spring? Is there something that you were looking for? Did you want to tell a story like this? Has it been brewing?
Yeah, well, I often say this, like I fall into things, like in my career, in my life and everything, and I fell into the climate narrative. Initially when I saw the pitch, as a filmmaker who makes shorts, I was like, okay, opportunity to win some money to make a film.
Yeah, of course.
So my intentions were not pure, but they became purer the more I made this
clearly,
film.
you know,
and the more I learned about what my role as a filmmaker is in the grand scheme of things in the climate. And I learned so much through the guidance of Climate Spring, of BAFTA Albert, and other guidelines that we were introduced to, and I was introduced to as a filmmaker making this story. So it started off with me going, how do I win some money to make a film, because it's so hard to make a film, and turned into, oh man, like as a filmmaker, I do have a say in the climate through what I do and my stories.
Do you feel that now going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like now, like I was introduced to this narrative idea as a writer, where there is a rule. I think Lucy, you can speak more of this. There's a rule, I forget the name, but it's when you write a character or a world, regardless of whether it's from the perspective of the climate crisis and what's happening in the world, does your character know about the climate crisis? Are they aware of it? And does the world, you know, is it shown in the world? Even if it's something completely different, even if it's like Romeo and Juliet. If I write Romeo and Juliet now, I'd think about that, you know, like, is it rainy when she brings down her hair? I don't know. You know,
it's constantly storms that disrupt
So I learned different things as a writer as well, and also the effect it has when you write, because often when we write, we're in a room with our laptop and we're just writing, but then you realize that what you write becomes this thing. So do I really need to write a night scene? You know, because that's more lights. It's more lights, it's more energy being used, being consumed.
So the practical side of it.
The practical side of it.
That Gavin can probably speak to. Yeah.
Do I need a car chase or a helicopter chase? You know, it's...
exactly. I've been writing short films, but one of them has no necessarily mention of it. Unfortunately, well, it's mostly set in the 90s, where, you know, we don't think of those things. But I have to, then I think about, can I save energy? Elsewhere, you know, or do it that way. Maybe the story about how we made the film can be the story that I contribute for that particular project. But Lucy, Climate Spring, do you find that people, you know, once they learn that they have a role, like I'm saying, like the idea that you now have I remember speaking to a theatre director about this, that once you know, you can't unknow. And I guess I wondered if you could speak to that idea that once people are involved in this project or with you, or were trying to find you, or it happened to them, that they all become sort of bastions of climate stories.
Once you're in, there's no escape.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I know. Unfortunately, the anxiety has a good old grip. Yeah.
Well, also, a bit of the reason why I set up Climate Spring was we really felt that there were lots of creatives like Elham who maybe wouldn't sort of identify as, a climate activist or weren't kind of chaining themselves to something. But what we knew is that actually most of society are worried about the climate crisis. Vast majority, sort of consistently about 80% of the population, even in the States, even under Trump, everybody is deeply worried about it.
Yeah.
But most people don't feel any sense of agency or any understanding of what can they do. And we really wanted to sort of unleash that, if you like, or kind of unlock the writers and the creatives who felt, who might not realise they had something to say about it. Particularly if you don't always have to approach it as talking about the problem of the climate crisis. As you said, it's the world we're in now. It's the context of the world, and how that plays out is, all to play for. How much that is going to be the very worst case scenarios or the best case scenarios. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but yes.
Yeah, and actually in our lead up to this, obviously we talked about the idea of hope.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering when your team are finding the next stories, whether that be for, a particular fund or a particular sort of project.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what kind of message you want to write in the world? I know that you can't control the creative per se, but the idea of some hard hitters and then some hopeful. Is there a mixed? Do you think of it as an array of stories?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we do. We have quite a clear kind of. We have a hard no for very bleak dystopian stories.
Okay, good. We have lots of them.
I think we've had a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their role, right? They definitely had their role.
They definitely brought me here.
When 20 years ago, I started working on climate change, and I don't know if anyone saw recently, just a few weeks ago, there was the latest IPCC science reports. So every year the climate science is updated. And just a few weeks ago, they said, the scientists have to do kind of an array of scenarios, right? On the current trajectories, where we might be heading, how well are we doing at tackling this issue? And when I started, the worst case scenario was totally terrifying. It was absolutely the worst Hollywood dystopian apocalyptic,
this way
The
up.
Road, movie scenario. And that literally kept me awake at night. It was a pretty scary worst case scenario. The best case scenario, right, is that we don't just head off the worst case scenario, we actually pivot towards a much better way of living, right? A more sustainable, more regenerative, healthier way of living. And the latest science has now said that worst case scenario is no longer on the table. So that's a huge win. I mean, that is, we've succeeded.
Because that will keep me going now for a few weeks.
Yeah, it's good. It's it's really important to acknowledge the wins, right? They've eliminated that scenario, but so unfortunately have they eliminated the best case scenario.
Yes.
So the very best case scenario where we kind of keep within kind of current levels of warning. So we're in the messiness now of a messy transition, and it's going to be a bumpy ride. So this is a long answer to your question. I'm getting that.
It's great.
So the kind of stories that we're looking for stories that wouldn't necessarily be pitched as climate or sold as a climate story. We're really looking for stories that will do three things across all genres. I mean, we think, climate stories should be everything from comedy and, love stories to romance to reality TV. We look for three things. So one is we look for telling the story about justice and accountability. Most of us are being gaslit into thinking it's your fault, you flew on your holiday, you didn't recycle your coffee cup, it's your fault. And it's really not. We didn't choose the world that we live in. Most people did not choose that we're living in a fossil fuel.
And it grabbed a lot of the, I would consider myself an activist grudgingly after many years, but ultimately I was in the chokehold of, I need to just be so good. Yeah. And it was exhausting.
It's
exhausting. And it's designed to de-energize.
You will always fail. The purity test will always be failed.
Well, we'll still try.
We'll always be hypocrites. Exactly,
Yeah.
that's key. The second point is key. So there's a justice story there for
Yeah.
holding those to account who have quite deliberately kept us locked into the worst case scenarios. That has been a deliberate strategy, and there's justice stories to be told there. But then the second, as you say, is unlocking people's agency of what can we do, a huge amount that we can do. It's all to play for, and you can't do that on your own. There's a lot you can do on your own, but really it's a kind of collective action problem. And then the third is, the biggest sort of story gap that we're looking for is, what if we win? What if we transitioned away from away from fossil fuels rather towards renewables? What if we had regenerative food farming practices? What if our cities were livable cities?
Yes.
What would that look and feel like to raise your kids in that world? To go to school, to be a mum, to play on the streets, and really rendering that and playing with that and imagining what that might look like. It doesn't have to be sci-fi 100 years in the future. That could be 5 minutes in the future, because that's all unfurling right now already. There's a whole movement across every sector to try and pivot towards more sustainable ways of being, and imagining that's the biggest power of culture. Is imagining that, getting us excited about that, making us want to go there.
I use that kind of argument because I meet a lot of climate deniers in my role. People are just totally against kind of any change, and often I do say, if I'm wrong, then the worst you have is a more efficient operations and a better way of living. If you're wrong, society breaks down. Which way do you want to gamble on this? And so I just don't understand.
You're like air quality? In general, just better? Or
terrible idea. Terrible idea.
Which is often the argument I give with EVs is like, it still has to be charged by a power plant that's run diesel. And I go, but the air in the city's cleaner. So you already have an initial one. But it's just trying to get that mindset, and I think that's the importance of narrative, getting that psychology to change, and show that actually there's so much to cover in this space. It's not just about, as you touched on, plastic bottles or recycling. There's so much more in this. There's so much more layers and levels. And I love what Elham said, that he didn't really have much interest in climate, but it was the opportunity to get out of follow me. I think that's great. I think that's so important.
Whatever
I try to
it
get that across. That's what I'm trying to get across to the local industry. We are looking for opportunities for originality. And if, as a filmmaker, you see an opportunity to tap into the Climate Spring Fund, and then by default you become more aware of the importance of climate narrative, then brilliant.
And then you're locked in.
You're locked in,
and it struck me as that the knowledge is tiered. So certain people have certain access to information about what is going to happen next. Certain people are afraid to read it, and the information about what is possible, like the beautiful horizon story, the story that where we do want to watch people living in a world where we know it's possible. And do Climate Spring, is there a way to inject that information into society, do you think? Is that coming from the artists? Do we need to be patient and let that filter out from the writers, from the makers? Obviously, like hitting people over the head with this information doesn't always work. But how are you finding that, with your artists? Does Climate Spring invest in that information too?
We do lots of, we'll bring for any project that we fund or support, we'll bring in particular experts, depending on what the story is. But we also we have fun doing world building so we bring some of the scientists, some of the experts on, whether that's renewable energy or, what does the food of the future look like, bring them together with creatives to start to kind of play in that space. And there's a few shows, there's a BBC drama coming up, Dreamlands, that we consulted on and helped them think about. It was the art team, it was the art department, thinking about the props and the set and what could they put in that world, because it's set in the future, so it's set in kind of like 15 years in the future, so it's near future, Margate in England. And so we were getting them to think about that future not just being all bad, because it's the truth, right? There's going to be impacts, but also there'll be change, and that's ever thus, right? Things are always changing, and so yes, we bring some of the experts, because it's really hard to know as a creative, right? What does it look like? I mean, it's hard to know.
Yeah, so you could dream it up and you could be right, but you could definitely get it Just right.
Yeah.
And what did you
Yeah.
land on for Dreamlands?
Well, I
What
don't
kind of
think I
world
can
did
say
you?
yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's going to be, I mean, I think what's exciting about it is it's based on a book that I really recommend if anyone hasn't read it, called Dreamlands. And it's imagining Margate as very low-level town.
Yeah.
And it's imagining kind of Margate being abandoned by the state. It's a bit like Under Salt Marsh, if anyone's seen that on Sky.
Yeah.
So they're kind of being left to the sea level rises and increasing climate impacts, but the local residents are not giving up. Obviously, they're it's a story of resilience,
Wow.
and community. So yeah, it's
Great to see
we'll
that
see.
something like that commissioned.
It's
That's
coming out
amazing.
soon. Yeah.
And so, education, I guess, like, the ever-changing information out there. And Gavin, you're at the hard front of, as you say, some of the deniers. But I remember we spoke before on a different panel about how people have changed. Certain characters who would have a bit more say in how their industry works. Let's say, the transport side of things.
Yeah.
Investing. Have you noticed, even in the time we've spoken to each other last on this, that
I've noticed.
how's it changed?
Yeah, so basically, I've been in this role all coming to 4 years next week, and primarily my focus has been on physical infrastructure, so battery tech, fuel. Northern Ireland alone has avoided almost 250,000 in CO2 emissions in the last 3 years for 19 productions, and that's for infrastructure. So now I'm focusing on a narrative at the moment. But yeah, I have seen definitely around infrastructure and battery tech particularly, by default, Donald Trump has become very sustainable because the war in Iran has now shifted the price of fuel through the roof.
Yes.
So productions are going, well, we can't afford this. What do we do? And now we've got batteries. So at the moment we have 7 high-end TV productions shooting in Belfast. 6 of them are on hybrid batteries in their bases. So they've significantly reduced their fuel. So the answer to that, yeah, I definitely seen people who at the very start were like, that's nonsense, it doesn't work, all the usual myths, They've started to slowly come around, understand the tech, understand the benefits, even just the practicalities of wrapping up at night, less cables, not having to depend on a generator in a noisy area. So that mindset, particularly infrastructure, physical infrastructure has changed, and then there's more of a desire to learn and improve. I've got one facility company that's just taken what I suggested and has absolutely ran with it, and are investing in EVs, and they have solar panels on the roofs of their trucks. So battery teams or camera teams now don't need to rely on a generator to charge their batteries. They have lights on in the middle of the winter. They're not waiting on a generator to pull up to the location. So many different things are happening. Even material waste in the past. So even after I have this panel, I'm going to Blue Lights studio to take the keys for a warehouse because all the props are going to be donated.
Yes.
So in the past, I would have been ring a skip company. Pull it up to the front of the prop store, straight in, away to landfill. That was up until very recently, a year ago. So there's definitely been a change in how we approach the physical infrastructure. But yeah, now my focus is on, as a screen commission, how do we invest more in local writers and producers, and I know that changing the narrative of Northern Ireland and the Indigenous stories. There's just so much more opportunities, and it really frustrates me. We're in a space here now where there's so many producers and developers looking for that next story, looking for something that's different, original, and not just a nostalgia tale, not just a reboot.
Yes.
And this is it. I find this is it. This is the story of our time. Like, these are things. There's so many opportunities. The person in Belfast has been affected by climate, same as someone in London, but maybe in a different way. Their life may be affected personally. And I think as young filmmakers or new filmmakers, there's such an opportunity there to define that.
Yeah, because Belfast is dealing with its own, future proofing. So, but with that in mind, considering we've just very seamlessly moved on to the fact that a local writer, a local artist, Kieran Bartlett, is also part of one of your projects, one of your commissioning. I guess, how would you describe?
It was the same scheme that Elham was on, so it's called the Hot House, and it's basically an opportunity for kind of newer writers to apply for support and funding, and we give a brief of the sort of stories that we're looking for, and then we support the cohort of writers to develop their ideas. But we've brought in production companies to attach to the projects at that early stage, which is often the biggest hurdle, right, for a writer.
It's the biggest thing,
getting a production company attached to the project. So we've done that. They've got a production company on board and some funding and some support to develop their ideas, and then you're kind of part of a cohort of, what is a kind of rapidly expanding movement of writers and artists and actors who kind of want to be, as you say, want to be part of this story.
But also want to make things.
I want to get stuff made. I mean, it's hard enough to get anything made. So getting something made needs a whole family of ecosystem of support around you.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, very much as you say, I think part of the kind of framing problem of climate has been, right, that it's a sacrifice. It's something either it's something kind of worthy that you maybe do as a side project to your main career, you know, or it's going to be a sacrifice, but it'll be the right thing to do. And I think what's shifting, which is quite exciting, is, you know, the solutions. You know, renewable energy is it's often a better technology. It's like an upgrade. If you've driven an EV car, having driven a diesel car, it's just like upgrading your whole experience. And so seeing that's basically what's happening. We're upgrading all of our infrastructure away from kind of a Victorian, dirty, you know, industrial
we've been
system.
hanging on to, but, you know, it's sort of
way beyond
there's a
its
lot
life.
of money and time and energy invested in keeping it.
Exactly, keeping us locked into
for a
that.
certain group of people. And so the rest of us are just,
you
know, getting snippets of what is possible.
Exactly.
And even just we chatted before about the fact that with EVs or batteries, it's just quieter. So you know, you get to make the show you want outside.
That's it. It just benefits
without
your
it
operations.
being,
And it's the angle that I've gone down that I think sustainability has been framed wrong. I think that it's about efficiency. I don't like using the term, oh, you need a sustainability manager or sustainability PA on set. I would like to see it become an operations manager. Because for me, that's what it is. It's about making your operation more efficient and effective.
Did you see those two things merging?
That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah, that's my
great.
goal, is because I think you touched on it before. Like, what does the world look like when if this all changes? So if we do our job right, there shouldn't be a sustainability manager on a production.
Exactly. Yeah.
It should just be, you know, an operations role or a facilities role or something that is just focused on how we operate. It should be by default. Same like health and safety. You know, the same nature. It's just some way we work. It's not a box tick and it's not a sacrifice. It's how we operate.
Yes.
You know, and I think there are people that, unfortunately, there's not a lot of people. There are people who have engaged with it, understand it, and see an opportunity. But you know, as you can see here today, there's not a huge amount of people have engaged. And that's disappointing, because I think it's a story that should be told better. And I think we are getting there. And again, projects like this sometime in spring are definitely helping with that. But there's so much more room for improvement.
And also, I can speak about the efficiency as well, because when we were making this film,
that was another question. I was like, is it part of your? You could speak to both of you. What Climate Spring? How you make it? Is that also part?
Oh, it was so important, because when we were making this film, we sat down and we were like, okay, how do we walk the walk? How do we make this film about sustainability in a roundabout way, but make it sustainable? And we had smart location planning, which means that when we were doing pre-production, trying to find our locations, we were looking for, one of the pivotal scenes is Mira, our character is in a body of water. So we had to find this lake or this pond or whatever it might have been. So we're like, okay, once we find that, where can we find the graveyard, Mira's house, Mira's sister's house, the bus stop? Like, can we make them all within 5 minutes of each other? And we did. We found all the locations close by, which means that we didn't spend as much time going between sets, and we didn't have as many cars going between sets, which means emissions were low. We saved time, we saved money. We had vegan catering, we had green generators on set, no idling. We were reusing all our props and giving it back. So a lot of these I was learning on the job, because I was like, like I can make something that's actually efficient, and also it doesn't break the bank, or it doesn't get in my way.
I would say it actually saves money. I say this because I run a company with another actor-writer called Ahrak, which is the old Irish word for change. And what we're trying to do with every production with so little money, we're still learning, is, you know, for example, we had to do some pickups recently. So I drove to 2 hours to a location where we knew most of the skeleton crew would live. Found a beach we could shoot on, which is 3 minutes from the house that we could use. Because it was the easiest thing, but actually because it was the cheapest thing to do. All of our catering was vegetarian. We didn't go vegan because slowly
we had really tasty
but yeah,
vegan
of course.
kitchen, you know?
But it's interesting, like how you can create a structure for yourself that you're working with every time. The catering thing, as I know myself, and we know within this sort of people who have an interest in this, how to make these films this way, we know that vegetarian but vegan menus are so much more sustainable.
Yeah.
But interestingly, it is something that we have to, warn our crew about every time. By the way, if you need a meat protein, we can provide it, but we're not providing it. People don't ask for it then, but I have had producers go, oh God, we need to give them, and it's only a small aspect of how we make these things, but it is interesting, like the change can be a little bit uncomfortable for certain people. But
I just think as well on that, I think that there's this obsession with sustainability and be perfect.
Yes, exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Just move away from that. Like, I'm not asking everyone to be, entirely meat free, but we start somewhere.
Yeah.
Even if it's just eradicating red meat, there's a start.
But just as an example, the menu thing, I mean, there's so many versions of this in different departments, but ultimately I think people, like you were saying, people want to do more and they feel disenfranchised. They don't feel that they have any power, and in fact it's probably easier to look away when they can be part of the answer.
Yeah, look away or feel, I can't be, the purity test's too high, therefore I'll do nothing.
And God forbid I should be called. I remember the first time someone called me an activist, and I genuinely had a panic. I was in a cafe in Dublin, and it was written in some newspaper article. I'd done an interview for a show, and I genuinely, not trying to be funny, I really did feel uncomfortable. I said to my friend Emmett, I was like, I'm not an activist, what are they talking about?
It's like someone calling you comrade. Right?
Yeah. And then I just sort of went, oh, whatever, it's selling the show, who cares? But actually, you can be a quiet part of the answer, I guess.
Change. I love that your company's called Change. I mean, that's another part of it, isn't it? Is that the response to the climate crisis and what sustainability looks like is also tapping into kind of that indigenous story perspective and those narratives that we were talking about, which is, a lot of the narrative myths are, part of that kind of colonizing narrative, right? There's just one way of doing things, which is quite often a kind of top-down way of doing things. So, take the meat assumptions, for example, a lot of that, the reason why meat is so bad for the environment is because most meat production is highly industrialized form of meat production. That industrialized process is extremely damaging for the planet, for the animals, and it's, not good quality meat. An indigenous food culture might include meat, but that meat be a smaller part of your diet. It's probably been on a regenerative farm where it's been, growing sustainably. So it's that shift towards what is a healthier, more relational viewpoint of how we relate to each other in the natural world. And that's from a story, creativity, narrative perspective is kind of a rich space to explore.
Yeah, and I wonder, we haven't touched on it yet, but we wanted to talk about the Green Rider. And it's about asking for the change. I guess. Would you say? I think we thought that the idea is that a rider, like a list of requests, I guess, demands, depending on who you are. I used to run the Ents at my uni. We got some interesting riders through that door. But I guess asking for change and so maybe we talked about how you, Lucy, and Gavin could talk to this about what it actually means, the Green Rider.
Shall I say a little bit? And
then go ahead.
Your perspective. I mean, it came from so Will was unfortunately couldn't make it. It was a group of actors like yourself, thinking, how can I use my position as an actor? I'm not an activist necessarily, but I kind of care about this. What's my role as an actor? You're not writing it. You don't have a huge amount of leverage. Well, the perception is, but actually you can, right? And so it started as a kind of movement of actors coming together to talk about how can they use their position. And it was called the Green Rider because it started from thinking about that negotiation around what are their demands, on a set, what are our demands, and trying to shift that away from high consumption demands. I want my own trailer, I want a private jet, I I want blue M&Ms, whatever, you know, to challenging the sort of the consumption culture that is attractive to star
And can we have
power.
some examples of what that might be?
Well, so what they've shifted it away from just being the contract negotiation to being more of a handshake, a conversation about what you care about as an actor. So some examples have been, and Benedict Cumberbatch was one of the high-profile actors who kind of supported the Green Rider. And what it meant was he said, any project I'm attached to as talent, this is what I care about. My agent knows this is what I care about. The production team has to know this is what I care about. And I want the production team, therefore, to do everything they can, and I'll support that, to be as green as possible.
Okay.
From catering, from, you know, but also from their involvement as talent. So Mark Rylance, for example, he said, you know, when he was attached to a project, he said, don't give me my own car, I will share, you know, radical idea as an actor, but I'll carpool with the other cast. I don't mind. I do not mind just because I'm the big talent. So it's been really interesting because it's obviously there's a big difference between a big star power and the leverage you have is huge. And what that signals as well is really powerful to the commissioning team and the production team. It's kind of giving them permission for the sustainable production people to come in and do their work, but also for, you know, actors who don't have necessarily that big star power, but they still have a role to play and finding that role as an actor.
Like a gentle shaming to other actors. No, I wouldn't say that's a negative word, but it's certainly a very quiet and inspiring thing to do is to just say, well, I'm going to get in the car with the number 25 and I'm number 1 on the call sheet, and the number 25 gets in the car. Mark Rylance is there. You'd be like, oh,
that's how he gets his big break.
oh shit! I was going to learn the line. But you would be pretty. But it would be a pretty cool way to start your career. I just had a drama school, you know, riding along with Mark Rylance. But certainly, so that's the essence of it, right?
That's the essence of it.
And have you had to engage with it at all? Gavin's smiling.
I got a lot of trouble last year on a panel because the response to your question, and I said, my first response is it's bullshit. And I said that because
because you're a cynical man.
Yeah.
This is our joke.
I don't know, and they got really messy. But she didn't let me. I wasn't allowed to finish what I was trying to get across was the essence, the purpose of it is great, and I get the point. But the reality is that it's not being. And you know, the first point there on the handshake is communication, and it's not being communicated. And cast do have, depending on your level of cast. That's another thing that's not really clear is, you know, you know this, like as an actor, there's a big gap between the 1% who have the massive star power and the job an actor, and it's, you know, it's more the job an actor that will have this handshake and will have the Green Rider than the megastar whose name has attached to a project that is guaranteed to have to be funded. And sometimes they come along with these huge, mostly at times ridiculous requests. And in my experience as a location manager, what's that?
What?
Well, like the maddest one I ever had was I had an actor, a very well-known Hollywood A-list actor, demand an aircon and heater at the same time, and both were running at the same time.
Right.
And like,
Who was he?
So not the most.
Name him.
I'll get a few drinks later on.
Not a scientist by trade, then.
You'll find me just letting loose who's who.
Notions, as we say. Yeah.
But
okay.
so that like that's where my cynical view on some of these green practices come in, because again, that production team got all you know talked on the marketing campaign about its promise to sustainability and its promises to the environment. In reality, you know, I seen the levels of waste. I seen what was going on behind this, behind the scenes. The true, you know, I always made the reference that as a location manager, you know, it was me that buried the bodies, and now I'm as a sustainability manager, I'm picking them back up again, going, see what you've done. And so I was very cynical in the Green Rider, but as you know, as NI Screen, like we enter our new strategy, and there's QR codes on each of those slides, so you can see more about our current strategy, the full picture. As part of that, I'm taking what we've learned in the last 4 years on infrastructure, we're building on that, but we're also taking narrative, and we're taking the Green Rider, and we want to embed it into our policies, into our requirements, so that it's, you know, if you want our funding, you're going to have to get your cast to commit to this and engage.
So
with
this is how we, I mean, we only have a few minutes left, but so I guess it keeps coming up again and again on these panels and with these conversations, is that it needs to be built into how we do these things. It needs to be built into funding policies. It needs to be built into conversations and built into the point where it's just a fluent conversation. It's not, and now let's talk about sustainability. It's just there. Can we see that happening in the next few years?
Oh, absolutely. But anyway, that's why we've been so successful here, because I've linked it. You know, when I started this, I was kind of on, you know, the notepad figuring this out and come up blank, and then someone described policy to me, and I was like, do you mean if I put this in a contract, they sign that and they don't get our money until they do this rule? Yeah. So they started writing rules and they started signing them, and they didn't realise they signed them until down the line when I said, oh, but you must use HBO instead of diesel. What do you mean? And then you write it in your contract, you sign that. So
it takes certain people to also deal with those conversations. Not everyone's up for it. And so I guess there are lots of ways to approach it. But one of the things I would love to talk about before we leave is the idea of hopefulness, because we talked about this on our intro Zoom, about how it's such a powerful part of making these things happen and maintaining them. And I would love to be able to leave the room today going, wow, we're on the right track. Do we feel like it's creeping into, or not even creeping, it's arriving at different parts of how we make across the industry? I know we were saying sometimes people tick boxes, and then when they had the report at the end, they're like, oh, you were so good and you did all these things so well, but actually we know the truth. But is the truth actually reflecting the reality now? Is that truth?
I mean, I'd say we're well on the way, because on two fronts. I mean, definitely the sustainable kind of practices behind the scenes and on the set. I mean, that's just going to happen because, as you said, it's just better technology, and it's going to happen. It's a question of how quickly everybody realises that. On screen, on the narrative and the storytelling, I mean, similarly, you know, we're in the middle of crazy mental times, right? And that's because we're in the middle of, it's like going through another industrial revolution right now on steroids. You know, that is what we're going through. It's like
puberty.
And it's why we all feel, you know, buffeted by the madness of everything. But and it's hard to see the woods for the trees when you're going through it. But we are, if you zoom out a bit, we are going through an extraordinary period of change, and that is also positive. If you think in Ireland, there is a rewilding movement, there is a movement of regenerative farming happening. You know, renewables are becoming cheaper and cheaper and more accessible. It is happening, and it's sort of tuning into that, getting excited about that, and letting ourselves spend as much time in that
and dreaming of that, instead of worrying,
bringing that to life.
Yeah, exactly.
Spending as much time in that is good for your mental health.
No, it is, and I have to say that that's my own version, like making films. I made a film recently with children about biodiversity, and it technically has gone viral, but it's just that the children are really interesting. They're really clever. They're really quick. They know how to correct you on the facts. They're just such great people to hang out with when you're trying to make this thing happen.
I mean, I was just going to say real quick. I think it's going to feel a bit like when I've got a 14-year-old daughter, and you know, we watch 90s shows that I used to love sometimes, and wow, sometimes you watch them together and I think they're wildly inappropriate, they have not aged well, the sexism and the racism, wow. And I think it's going to be like that pretty soon. If you don't have this in your story, it's going to feel wildly out of date and irrelevant. I mean, Netflix talk about that a lot. They say their most popular titles are their sustainability titles. Your content is just going to look
just desperate to find the answer. And I guess what I could ask is Elham, like, because you're not necessarily in the hard face of implementing these ideas and trying to make them happen, are you finding with your own peers, your own fellow creatives, that there is a change?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or are you just finding these people?
Well, also like in my own work now, going forward, I'm so climate conscious in what's happening. And back to your question about the hopefulness, like you see what's happening around the world right now, and like the attack on Iran, when that happened, you're like, oh shit, it's kicking off. But then you realize, actually, Donald Trump has now, by accident, become the greatest champion of sustainability, because you've hit the entire planet where it hurts, which is their wallet. And they're like, oh, fossil fuel's expensive when we can't access it. So now you have all of these, you know, policy coming in place with solar panels in England, which wasn't which is really restricted because of safety. But now they're like, okay, we need to make it easier for people to buy solar panels, so solar energy, and all of this is, I think, it's really helpful.
Easy for my company to talk to crew and go, well, it's really expensive, but actually it's pretty bad for the environment. So like it kind of goes hand in hand, like, and then they have to go, oh yeah.
And they're like, well, you had me at expensive, like that's where it hurts. But in my own work, going forward, when I write and when I direct and I'm on set, I'm always thinking like, does this scene need to be here? Do I need to? Because then I'm thinking, well, what's the energy consumption of this scene?
It's very exciting now. I'm very excited for your work.
It's good. It's good because constraints are always good for me.
They're great. Like, I mean, you shouldn't say too loudly to funders. Just restrict me completely.
Still give us the money,
and I'll make something. Because often you're going, if I had 20 grand, I could do something, but we'll have two. So let's see what we can do.
Even when you get 20 grand, it's always like I speak to friends who are doing bigger projects in the bigger sums, and they're like, well, the problems are still there, but it's different problems.
Yeah.
So
exactly. I'm looking at this. There's red numbers on the screen saying 3, 2, 1. But on that, thank you, everyone. We had 45 minutes to try and get through one of the biggest. I know to us one of the biggest parts of making films and making TV shows and writing, creating. Hopefully the message will trickle into the building and people were like, shit, I wish I went to that. That sounded really good. And everyone's really hopeful and they're telling, I'm going to write a climate story now. But not a climate story. A really good, well-crafted story with great characters who happen to be set.
You need to Trojan horse it, don't you?
Exactly. So thank you so much, everyone. And I guess the information is in the QR code at the end.
Yeah,
that might lead you to
on our strategy, and we hope to be working more with Climate Spring in the future. So keep watching our website and our social feed. You'll see information about opportunities for training.
Gavin would single-handedly change the face. You were doing it. I have to give you some kudos.
Before we just finish up, I was going to say that from my own side of hope, it is sometimes I do these panels, and thank you everyone for coming today, but it's sometimes a bit disheartening when there's not a huge audience.
Yeah.
And I do go, what's the point? But then there's days like yesterday, I signed into the portal, and there was 6 batteries operating across all these productions.
Great.
And 3 years ago, there's nothing, there's no fuel, there's nothing. So
That's
we have to
lovely.
look back and go, how far the journey has come.
Yeah.
And despite social media, despite news and politics, it is shifting rapidly. I see the technology improving every day, and I see the uptake happening, as you said, just by default.
So even if people don't come along, they're going to have to come along. They'll come along with the ride anyway.
It's just, as we touched on, we're born into this world, but sometimes we can't choose where we live in circumstances, but the world is changing, it's going at that pace. So I do think we'll look back and go, we were in the right lane at the right time.
Yeah, and we tried our very best to get everyone in the same lane. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. And